In the infamous words of Han Solo, I've got a bad feeling about this. This is the remains of the bread quotes dough that we've made earlier. Actually, it's looking like the baking powder's doing its thing because it has got a few bubbles of CO2 in there. I can feel it as I'm moving it around. But I'm somehow going to attempt, and it is the words attempt there that I will use, to turn this into some sort of dough that we can roll out and then turn hopefully into some mini pizzas. So if you have at home some bread dough, or ready-made pizza bases, feel free to use them. But if you've got strong plain flour and yeast, make a batch of bread dough as you would do at home normally. This is too sticky for me to roll out at present, so I'm going to try adding about a tablespoon more flour and just stir it in and see what this does. And I'm hoping this will look better. In the words of my 18-year-old daughter just a moment ago, this looks gross. It's more of a batter than a dough, and I have to say I agree. But ever the optimist, I'll take another spoon of that and try that. We'll try it. I'll try things, and if it doesn't work, then you won't be watching this video. If it does work, let's bear with it. It has a good ending. There. That is now a little more dough-like, possibly. I'm going to get my hands in there and just try and bring this together. Now, as it hasn't got the yeast in, this particular one, if you've watched the previous video you'll realise why. I don't need to knead this. I'm just trying to get the flour incorporated so that I can then roll out this batter. It is very sticky. On the positive, I did have a little peep through the glass of the oven door a minute ago, and the rolls that we put in look okay, so even if this bit doesn't work, perhaps the bread might help you out of a hole if you can't find any bread in the shops and you haven't got any bread flour. So let's try this. My hands are so sticky. There we are. Trying to get any bit of flour out to help me with this next little bit. And I'm going to try to just get that flour incorporated. It is going to want to stick to the worktop. So I think I've added 2, maybe 3 more spoons of flour, and this is now starting to just come together a little bit. I know it looks like I'm kneading this. I'm not especially trying to knead it. That is actually almost roll-outable. Almost. I reckon that will do. So with bread dough, you randomly do want it to be stickier rather than too dry. If it's too dry, you can't roll it out at all. So it's not too much of an issue that it's a little bit sticky, but I don't want it to stick to the worktop. Now, if you've watched rolling out pastry with me in one of the earlier videos, you will know how to roll this out. And because it's got no yeast in, it's not going to be, and no gluten developed, it isn't going to be bouncing back to its original shape. So this should be fairly easy to roll out, a bit like the pastry was. Going to roll it out. Look at this. Piece of cake. It is. Hopefully it's a piece of pizza dough, Hayley, not cake. But there we are. Roll it out. Again, about the thickness of a pound coin. It has got some elasticity to it, so it's stretching a little bit. Alright. I'm going to have to go and get those bread rolls out of the oven. We'll have a look at those in just a moment. Let me wash my hands. This feels so sticky and horrible. The bread rolls smell nice, actually. They've come out. That's interesting. I think they possibly are going to go back in for 5 more minutes. They feel a little bit doughy to me. So we're going to give them 5 more minutes and see what that does. Which gives us just time to finish off these pizzas. Now, if you wanted to, you could just cut these to the shape you wanted using a knife. That would be absolutely fine. I've got a cutter here. Let's see if I can get 2 of these out. If I can, I'll be quite impressed. Quite a large cutter, that one. But you could use a knife just to cut out squares. That wouldn't be a problem at all. And I'm going to need to re-roll this sticky dough. Down. That is a weird mixture. Again, like with the pastry, try not to get any of the dough onto the rolling pin, otherwise each time you roll it, it lifts the pastry or dough or whatever you're working with up off the rolling pin. So there's the second one of those. I could probably make a little tiny one as well. If I did make a little one out of the last little bit left over, I'd place that one in the middle because things cook from the outside in. So the bits on the outside, the bigger pizzas on the outside, would take a bit longer to cook. So then it's a case of topping this with whatever you would like. I would start off, if it was me, with some tomato puree. If you've got passata, you could use that. Passata is quite liquidy compared to puree, and so it will make them quite difficult to get off the tray, as it tends to make everything a bit more sticky. So I'm using puree, probably a teaspoon on each. I've also, because it was such a sticky dough, I've lined the tray with a little bit of greaseproof paper to hopefully help me get them out at the end of the day. I'm going to take the puree, about a teaspoon probably on there, no more than that, because, or you can do, but it is quite a bitter taste, and you don't want to overpower these just with puree. So these are going to come all the way out to the edges. If you have too much, it does tend to burn and go black in the oven, which obviously is not a good thing. And then you can top these with whatever you like. You can get your children involved. It's a really nice project to do with them. I've got here just some bits and pieces that I've got at home. So I've got a bit of onion that I've sliced really thinly because raw onion's not very pleasant. Didn't have any sort of meat that I could put on top of this. If you've got any cooked bacon, that would be lovely. If you've got some pepperoni, that would be great. If you've got any chicken that's cooked, you could put that on as well. Got a little bit of pepper here. Now this is where, if this was a child, they would be sitting and making this look like funny faces or whatever. There we are. And I've got a little bit of sweet corn. That was a tin that got opened yesterday. Obviously I've removed the contents of the tin, put it into a dish and covered it in the fridge overnight. That really needs to be used up, so that can go on. Then got some cheese. There's often discussions about whether the cheese should go on the bottom of the pizza or on the top. I like to put it on the top only because it sticks everything down as it melts. So this is just some cheddar. If you've got mozzarella, go mad, put the mozzarella on. There you go. And the last thing, because it's on my windowsill and it just needs using up, I've got some basil, a basil plant that's been growing for a little while on my windowsill. So I'm just going to take a couple of basil leaves and just wash them and put them on top as well. I reckon 2 per piece will be enough for those. That might be nice to put them underneath the cheese. I'll try and sneak some under there. There we are. There we go. These are then going to go into the oven. Again, I would put them in the same as the rolls have gone in, which was 180 degrees, about gas mark 4 or 5. I would go for about 12 to 15 to 20 minutes, depending on basically getting this base cooked at the bottom. You don't want it to be doughy because it's much thinner than the rolls. I would imagine it would take a lot less time than the rolls to cook, and the rolls have now been in probably for their extra 5 minutes, so I'm going to get those out now. Thanks ever so much. I'll show you what these look like when they come out the oven. After about 15 minutes probably these have been in, I've had a look at them. They are starting to go nice and crisp around the edges. Actually, they've risen really well, so that baking powder has really done its job. They've been out the oven just for a couple of minutes, so I can lift it up and show you that the base of this is actually sounding like bread, should sound hollow at the bottom there. It's also got a little bit of colour on it. It's not doughy either. If you've used something like passata on the top or something like tinned tomatoes on the top, then it will be slightly soggier than this. The puree keeps it quite dry. Didn't tell you at the start, obviously I've used up the remainder of the bread made from plain flour, which actually tastes a bit like scones, we decided after we tried it a little bit further. If you didn't have that, or if you wanted to use something different, you could use normal batch of bread dough. You could also do this onto something like a naan bread, if you have a naan bread, or a pita bread would work nicely, and just top those up, and that'd be a nice alternative to a base like we've just made today. So there we are, they're done. They can then be used as possibly snacks, or if you made a few more of them, then for your dinner. It's something that your children probably would really quite enjoy helping to make there. As you can see with that dough, it is cooked all the way through, and I'm sure would be quite enjoyed by people for a snack or for their dinner. Hope that helps you a bit.